Hi, my name is Sam Biddle and welcome to my YouTube channel. And in this lesson we are going to do a seascape in pigments. So we're going to make this landscape out of pigment. We're primarily using pigment powder to create the background, but we will be doing some detail with paint as well. You can do landscapes over 3 tips or just 1. I've done a boat on each of these, and on its own it looks just as good. So if you don't want to do it over 3, you can definitely do it over 1, although I think it looks nice over 3. This is a different kind of landscape. I've just chosen a different kind of reference image, and what I would definitely recommend is that you use a reference image rather than try and do it out of your head. That way you can get the colors right, the shadows right, and all of those other bits and pieces that we'll be talking about today. So this is a bit of a long video. The first thing I wanted to do was go through the tip sizes. Now, a lot of people ask me about what kind of tips I use. I use, when I want straight edge tips, long stiletto tips that I cut down. So this one, for example, you can see that when I've cut the end off, it tapers slightly, and then I've got that little triangle gap, which means that when I'm doing a landscape, for example, over 3 tips, or in the art world it's called a triptych, I'm actually going to get gaps in between, and I don't want that. So the best way for me to do that is to try and get a really long stiletto, cut the stiletto less than half, and so that I've got that nice long straight edge, and that I've got like a picture that runs over 3 nails without the interruption of those little triangles. So I would definitely recommend that you don't cut it this long. Have them so that they're reasonably short, that a client will look at it and go, you know what, this is way too long, I don't like this. You want them to like this. So have it so that they're at a reasonable length and that you don't put your clients off. Now, they're never really going to have this, to be honest with you, but what you want to do is you want to say, hey, you know, this is a possibility. Look how clever I am. And it's a marketing opportunity. So definitely don't go too long just because you can. You can probably get 2 tips out of this long stiletto, but I go for about this size. This is a clear one. You know, you can get these in clear or white. I get these in packs, hundreds of packs of 10 different sizes in each pack, which is very annoying. But also very useful, and you can get them on eBay, I think, and Amazon now. Before you couldn't. This is the reference image I'm going to use. This was the reference image I used for that purple one, but obviously we put a different kind of boat in there, only because of the fact that these tips were curved. I wanted to make sure that when I created this, that we're looking at something that will work over the 3 tips. And because the tips are curved, you've got to be quite careful. You can see that this boat looks quite short, but in actual fact, the boat is longer, that it just curves around. Also, I put the sun in the wrong place in this image, and I want to put the sun in the middle of the center tip so that the boat's in front of it, or the boat's just on 1 tip, and that way it sort of looks a bit more cohesive and the sun's not falling off the edge of the nail. So think about things. When you've got a reference image, it's a reference. You don't need to be completely exact with it. It's something that just gives you the inspiration. Treat it like a muse, for example. So let's get on with these pigments. What I've done is I've painted the tips in 2 coats of gel polish, and I've just left them. So they've been cured and they've got that sticky layer. Now these are the pigments that I'm using. You can get these from Be Creative. They're the Brights pigments, the Pretty pigments, Serenity, and some from the Drama collection. So there's a big range, and I'll list all of the pigments that I used in this lesson in the details below. So I'm just going to go through the brushes as well. I'm actually using brushes from McNails. This one is a very straight edge brush. This one she uses for 1 stroke. This is going to give me the detail for that horizon line and anything else I need. I have completely trashed this brush, which is why I use it for pigments. This is Mel's Aquarelle brush, and normally it's a lot better condition than this one, but I use it to blend in detail work for pigments. And of course that is, you know, whenever you use a brush for one particular medium, never change it up. You will always use it for that medium. This is another brush you can get. This is just a standard artist brush, nothing special, but again, this is a nice detail brush that'll actually get you in places that your bigger brushes can't. And then of course, I'm going to use some detail brushes as well that will get used when we do the boat. So let's get this horizon in. We're going to get the horizon and the sun in. Look at what you're doing when it comes to colors and placement. So, but the first thing we need to do is look at that horizon. It's a little bit different when you're painting with pigment, because wherever you actually put the powder down on that inhibition layer, you won't be able to put powder over the top of it. You will be able to affect it a little bit. You will be able to blend through. But the reason why you put the horizon in first is because if I was to put an ombre down, which would make sense, coming in to do the horizon, I would then have to paint the horizon. So I'm just going to place that horizon in, and I'm using the edge of the brush. It's a bit difficult. I'm going to get right in your face with my hand in a minute, but I'll pick up the tips and then, you know, we should work our way around. But we're just going to get the horizon in so that we can get placement of color around. One thing about this lesson is that when you're doing pigments, normally you would just work by getting a nice big soft brush and creating a beautiful ombre. The whole point of pigments is that it's quick and easy. Why am I painting with pigments? Because it's quick and easy. What I don't want to do is I don't want to paint and get brush marks and all of those little mistakes that you can get with paint. You won't get that with pigment. Now this is a pigment from the primary collection. It's just pure white, no glitter, no shimmer, no nothing. And I'm putting it down like a mask because once it's down, no other pigment's going to go in that place. So for instance, if I don't know, put a blue there by accident, then I really can't get rid of it unless I put an alcohol over the top of it, which I don't want to do. So if I put this white down, the white's going to be the brightest part, the center of the sun that's setting. Then I can actually then be sure that nothing else is going to go over the top of it, because that white pigment has stuck to the area. It's got that inhibition there. So I can't change it now. You know, nothing else is going to stick there. So basically we're just going to ombre, and if you've not seen any of the ombre videos that I've done with pigments, go check it out. I've also got courses on ombres and all sorts of things. I mean, I am one of the founders of pigments in the industry, and I've been supplying and creating pigments for years. So check out all my courses on Be Inspired Online. There is a ton of information that you can really get to grips with, and I've even got a course. It's only £10 and it's Pigment 10 Ways, and it's 10 different pigment designs. But you know, we're just going into a little more detail with this, and I just wanted to show you the option of why pigments is so great to use as art. The right brushes with the right patience, you can really make it work. So what we're going to do is continue with our ombre. I'm just adding a little bit of orange here, but whilst I've got the orange on my brush, I'm going to blend that further out into the other tips. Don't just work on one tip at one time. Keep working through all the tips so that imagine that you're working on one canvas, and even though you have to pick up the tips and work on it, it doesn't matter. You just would continue to just keep working on that one canvas, because you can see it as a whole. Otherwise, what you'll do is you'll end up losing the essence of the design, because you're just working on one tip. And then when you finish that, you're like, well, what do I do next? Where do I start? So we're just doing the sunset at the moment, or the sunrise, I should say. What is it, a sunrise or a sunset? You can never tell. I think blue is more sunrise, isn't it? And we're just gonna keep ombreing and just keep adding. You can see that I'm overlapping these colors. That works, but can you see that little line? It's because once that orange has gone down on there, I can't change it. So if you want more of an ombre happening, then you need to do a very little amount, which is why See how I'm putting a little bit of white on the paper, and I'm using just a regular paper so that the pigment sits on there. I don't want it to slide anywhere, so I don't use a palette or anything. I want the pigment to sit in the little grain of the paper. This is a beautiful pink, and you can get this pink either in the Serenity collection or the Pretty collection, one or the other. There's a slight change to the pinks. It doesn't really matter, and obviously you want to look at the painting or the reference image to see what colours you are. Study it. Don't just go, oh, what colour do I need to have next? Look at your painting, pull out all the colours that you've got, and if you've only got a few colours, then just choose a painting that references those few colours. So I've turned this upside down because we're doing the sky at the moment. What I don't want to do is have pigment going over the top of the water. So I'm just turning this upside down, which is a joy when you're working with tips. If you are working on a client, you might not necessarily be able to do that. But, you know, ideally, this is good. So we've got the blue, and whilst we're still working with the blue, we're going to add some more of the darker colour around the front, and then we'll keep adding the blue. I'm going to use this blue from the Pretty collection, but then I'm also going to use a teal. So all of these things. I lie to you. Actually, we're doing clouds. Sorry. So this is Melodrama. This is from the Drama collection. I absolutely adore this colour. It is one of those colours where you look at it and you go, why would I ever use that? But it's for art. And it's one of those colours that really add a shadow and strength to your design without being obvious. So we're doing the clouds, and sadly this morning isn't the brightest of mornings. There are some rain clouds about. And we're going to do the underside of the clouds, which is darker, and that's heavier. And then we'll do the lighter top part of the clouds, which will then give us those round, fluffy cloud effects, really. The one thing when you're painting clouds, if you paint clouds as you see them in the sky, people will say they can't possibly be real. They're not realistic but when you look at clouds in the sky, they just look like magic. They look completely unrealistic. And it's a real shame because you just want to paint them as you see them, but you can't because it looks fake, weird. So we're just going to keep enhancing the horizon. You can see I'm adding it to the horizon again, not much, and it's sitting over the top of the orange. So I'm going to need to be very careful when I come to top coat all of this. So we're just going to keep going, and now we're going to go and do more of the blue. We're just going to reflect the water, which is a little bit of this teal, so that we've got a little bit on the sky. We're going to have exactly the same underneath, and then we're just going to go darker and get darker towards the top because obviously it's morning, so it was darker. So that's basically what we're going to do. I'm running out of words now, so what I'm going to do is leave you to watch the rest of the pigment application. Then I will come back when we're going to add some little bits of detail. I'll see you in a while. You can see that I literally mirrored what was in the sky on the water, and that's what gives me that reflection. And we're just going to do a little bit of that foreground. It's slightly darker, it's more muddy because it is a shallower water. So we're pretty much done with our pigment application. You could do more if you wanted to, but I actually want to use some paints and add some more paints. What we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of the excess pigment. Now, can you see as I brush, I'm brushing along the grain of the pigment. I'm not going up and down from top to bottom because I don't want to pull pigment into each other. I want to go in the direction of the horizon, as it were. I am going to add a matte top coat to this tip. Now watch carefully. When I add matte top coat, I load my brush, but I'm not going to brush it. I'm actually going to put quite a lot over and down the middle of the nail. I haven't got that much in this pot. I have to go and get another pot. But I'm just applying quite a lot on my brush, so can't really see it in here, but it's quite a lot. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to brush from side to side, and I'm going to use the bulk of the gel that's here and brush downwards. So just in case I actually pull any of that pigment, I'm going to pull it in the direction that I want it to be. Now, if I would traditionally paint from cuticle to tip, then I'm going to end up pulling colour from top to bottom, which I definitely don't want to do. Make sure you go around all of the edges. See, I got a little bit there, but that doesn't matter. We can paint over that. And then pop this under the lamp. You're going to do the same for all 3 nails, and then you're going to do a second coat. This is important. Do a second coat, and then you will protect your pigment. Now you can see that I've got a little bit of a dent here, which we will just paint over with additional paint, so it's not so much of a problem. But what's so beautiful is that I've knocked all of that pigment into the background, all of the shimmer, and that just gives us that beautiful effect. Like it's almost smoky, it's really early morning misty, it's stunning. And you can put a glossy top coat over it all afterwards, so you can still benefit from it all. But so I'm using gel paint. You could use regular paint, acrylic paint for this. It's entirely up to you. Gel paint is my preferred choice always. I can work faster with gel paint. I'm also using a new brush of mine from Alice McNails. I'm really excited by this brush. It's tiny. Now I am going to add a little extra white over the sun area. This is again optional, but you probably don't need to do it because you've already got that pigment there and it comes up really well after the matte top coat. But I wanted to give you that option to add more if you wanted to. If I was doing this on a client, I probably wouldn't do this because it's not necessary. But if I was doing this for a competition, I would, because I would always want that additional layer because it adds depth. And you're not going over the top of everything that you've done, you're allowing that to shine through. These little lines that will appear in the water are going to reflect and be the ripples that you actually need. So we've got the little sunshine done. We're going to mix up some of the darker brown and just go along that horizon very, very lightly. And we're just going to keep going, adding a little darker brown towards the horizon, and then we're going to add some more on the foreground as well. Now, you can't really see this, but I'm adding a very, very light shade of blue in the blue area. These are ripples. And I've sort of got a white and blue mixture on my brush. So as I lay it down, it doesn't always go as one solid color. So it's important to get the ripples in the water because you want to show that it is water, and it looks very similar to the sky. If we were to turn this upside down, the only reason why you know it wasn't the sky is because of the brown. But really it's the reflection of what's in the sky, and the only way that we can change that is by adding those tiny little ripples. If, for instance, you were doing a beach scene and you were doing the water coming over the sand, then you would add more white because that would then be the sea foam coming up and over. So again, these little elements just add dimension. We've got a little bit of land masked on the back, just a tiny bit, just because it just leads the eye towards the center. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a small amount of gel to the front. Now I'm using, remember that brush? It was a really old used pigment brush. I've got white pigment on it. So it's given me this almost grey effect when I've added black into it. So when this cures, it gives me a really nice 3D effect. And you can see what I'm doing here. I'm layering it. So it sort of looks like rocks coming up from the front. And if you wanted it to look more like the shadow of the clouds, then you just do it a little bluer rather than browner. And I'm just going to blend it all through and just keep adding until I feel that it's right. Make sure that you're quite low in the middle, because this is the middle nail, obviously. Once you're happy, you can go ahead and cure. But if you aren't happy, if you grab yourself a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and you added that onto your brush, you could actually dilute that that blend a little bit so that it's almost transparent, rather than it being so obvious a rock face, or and you wanted it to be more like the sea or a reflection of the sea. I have got a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, and then I'm just going to brush the brush over the top. It's not wet, so it's important that you dry this off, and the brush is a little bit damp, not much, and you're just going to dab it. You can see how it blends it all out and it looks soft. And that's what we're looking for. So if you make a mistake, you can always use isopropyl alcohol to change it. That's what I love about the gel. It's easier to correct mistakes than it would be if it was acrylic. So the last thing we need to do is add a boat. Now, if I add a boat over the two nails like I did before, I'll end up losing half the boat. And when you're looking at the three nails, if you took one of the nails away, you'd end up with the back end of a boat, and it looks a bit weird. So maybe just bite the bullet and have the boat on one nail, or do what I did with the purple and put three different boats in different positions over all three nails. And that way, if you were ever to have the nail as a single, it would work okay. But boats are really easy. Can you see? It literally is a little rectangle. We're going to create a reflection in the water, and you can do that just by blending out the line that you are putting in right now. And then you're just going to create a boat shape. Make sure that you know where you're going to put the reflection and where you're going to put the mast. And always, always keep looking at your reference image, because your reference image is going to give you exactly what you need. But if you start working from your mind and your memory, then you're going to get mixed up and you won't be able to add what you're actually seeing. So I'm going to leave you to watch me make the boat, and I shall be back right before we finish. So it's done. They're all done, the boat's done, the reflection's in there, and I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. All that's left to do now is to top coat. So we have our gel, it's all cured. You can go straight over the top with either a gloss top coat or a matte top coat, it's up to you. You could put gloss on the sea, you can put matte on the sky. I don't care. I have done a gloss top coat because I love it, and I think it looks really nice. And I also feel that the gloss brings out a little bit of the colours, and I don't know. At the moment I'm into the gloss top coat, but you know, I'm fickle. I'm a fickle girl, and sometimes I'll go with matte. So let me know how you enjoyed this lesson, and let me see your results by tagging me on social media. All the links are in the detail, and I shall see you in the next lesson online.